with that, we have reached the number one team as voted on by the listeners here in the Big Ten Conference, and that would be the reigning national champion, Ohio State Buckeyes. Always fun to write the one preview that you can say they made it to the top, right? Out of 136, they were the last ones standing, hoisting that national championship trophy. We talked about the strategy earlier in the episode where Ohio State went all in on retaining their roster from 23 to 24. They bring in Will Howard to be a little bit more of an athlete than Kyle McCord was. I think we understood very quickly last year that McCord was not the thing holding this Ohio State offense back, right? As a result, the Buckeyes were able to have a very balanced attack. Jim Knowles had that defense absolutely singing. And by the end of the year, we were saying that the mantra defense wins championships was proven throughout the entire season by these Ohio State Buckeyes. But now they turn the chapter. And my number one storyline here is Julian Sayin, the new quarterback that they're turning the keys of the kingdom over to. Ryan Day is an offensive guy. Obviously, they've got all the wide receivers in the world. But how will this 6'1" sophomore, who has been told since he transferred from Alabama, hey, you're the chosen one, you're the next guy to take over Buckeye football, how will he handle that pressure and step into that role? We talked about the skill players. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate, just cheat codes, right? They're going to be disgusting to use in the new college football video game. They are equally as gross when you get them on a real life football field. But that's not all that Ohio State did, guys. They didn't just retain their wide receivers. They bring in the best tight end in the portal in Max Clare from Purdue, a guy that every team in the country wanted on their roster. They bring in CJ Donaldson from West Virginia, an absolute bowling ball at the running back position to pair with James Peoples. And, you know, Ohio State fans are rebuffing the Michigans and the Penn States and even Minnesota, saying, hey, you know what? We belong in that top 3 conversation for running back rooms in the conference as well. And then they do replace Jim Knowles with another familiar name, not to college football circles, but to football fans in general, and Matt Patricia, who's won Super Bowls at the NFL level with the Patriots and obviously knows how to coach defense. The question for Patricia is, did he lose some of that magic in the time that he left Bill Belichick's staff, went to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions? That didn't go over well. So can he kind of get back to those roots of calling a sound defensive game plan? And can it stand up to the high-paced nature of modern college football? Ohio State's an interesting case study here as we get into 2025. And on one hand, I think absolutely with the right pieces and the right bounces of the ball, we could say that they're the first team to go back-to-back in quite some time in college football. On the other hand, I wonder if statistically there's going to be some regression back to the mean. And again, by the mean, I really mean 10 wins, 10-2 and making the playoff.
Well, I mean, we don't have to look far to see a national champion lose a bunch of production and then not have a stellar season the next year, right? Not just returning production on the field with players, but returning production in the coaching boxes as well, because this is a team that obviously is going to be on paper the most talented in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any question, top to bottom, when you just look at recruiting rankings, they're going to be the most talented team in the Big Ten. But they replaced so much, man, like so much in one offseason, replacing the quarterback. I think we just assume that the running backs will be fine. And I love that they have a guy named Lamar Bo Jackson coming in as a 4-star recruit. Like, it's not only Lamar Jackson, it's also, he goes by Bo, which is just amazing. But and obviously Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are going to be fantastic safety blankets for Julian Sayin, but they have the top end talent. They showed last year that they had depth to win a national championship. It wasn't necessarily just the top end talent that put Ohio State over the finish line. They had depth of talent. And now that depth is going to get more playing time this year. So I'm interested to see how that goes. We're just kind of assuming that there's not going to be a learning curve. Both, you mentioned defense, but it's also a new offensive coordinator. The depth of the coaching staff last year, has there ever been, maybe outside of Tuscaloosa, I don't know if there's ever been a more talented trio of Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and Jim Knowles assembled in a coaching top three.
Sure.
Now we still got Ryan Day, but we've got a first-time offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline, a first-time college defensive coordinator in Matt Patricia. It's just a lot of turnover. And would I be shocked if they won less than 10 games? Yes, absolutely. I don't think they're going to have a 2024 Michigan season because the offense just is too cohesive to do that, and they have too much talent on that side of the ball. But even with all that talent last year, they still went 10-2 in the regular season and lost at Oregon and lost to Michigan. So just saying that they are going to be automatically back in the college football playoff, I think is maybe taking a step too far. Will they be there? In all likelihood, yeah. But it's going to be a really interesting road to get there, I think.
So let's go to the schedule, because Ohio State's schedule, their over under is 10 and a half. Yep. Right there at the top of the conference. So Ohio State's schedule looks like this. Start with a little team from Austin called the Texas Longhorns coming up to the shoe for week 1. Think they're going to be a couple eyes on that ball game to start the season. Grambling State and Ohio to finish off the non-conference slate. Bye week and then a tricky road game against Washington. We talked about them in the dark horses tier. That's a Huskies ball club that could absolutely jump up and bite you in the Pacific Northwest. Minnesota, Illinois, at Wisconsin, Penn State. They've got Michigan to finish out the year. There are certainly some landmines on this schedule. Now, with all of that being said, I think you do have to remind the folks at home that Ryan Day against teams not named Michigan, I think, is 56-1 in Big Ten play, and that one loss outside of the school up north came by 1 point to Oregon last year, right? So
when his quarterback forgot how many timeouts he had,
right?
Yeah,
and there was,
and if it weren't the case, they were kicking the field goal and winning. So
there was some gamesmanship from Dan Lanning that got a rule change. Like it took a very specific set of circumstances.
It's like a Herculean effort. I think he did lose one of the Purdue games. I think one of the Purdue games
he
was
might
Ryan
have,
Day,
yeah.
But
okay,
the point still stands. It's a fantastic record outside of Michigan.
Yeah, he just doesn't lose to any team outside of the maize and blue, right? And so you can certainly say like, oh, well, yes, this schedule is tough and Ohio State has to, plug some holes and answer some questions, but gosh darn it, they found a way to do that. On the other hand, you could also make the case that eventually that streak has to come to some sort of an end, right? We saw it come to an end against Oregon, and they go 10-2 and have that uncharacteristic loss to Michigan that only happens in a rivalry game situation. So the hypotheticals here are fascinating, and I do wonder. I think if Ohio State could find a way to beat Penn State off of a bye, right, to open up the month of November, at that point it feels like the rock would be pushed over the hill. I don't know that you would be able to stop the Buckeye momentum, because then you're talking about wins at Purdue versus UCLA and Rutgers, both at home. And then going on the road to Michigan, where I just feel like streaks are meant to end. And it's what, 5 in a row for Michigan?
Since 2019.
Yeah. So, and they didn't play in the COVID year.
Yeah.
So, eventually it feels like, okay, like it's got to swing back the other way. The Buckeyes, for all the, questions and things that they just objectively have to replace in this sport that is college football, they could roll into the playoff with all kinds of momentum just as easily.
Yeah, this is a fantastic team, and for all the questions I've had about teams, I have almost no questions about Ohio State. Like, if I really want to nitpick, I could say, like, ooh, well, like, Noah Mekaibuka, can Carnell Tate be that number 2 to take some pressure off of Jeremiah Smith? Like, but I'm nitpicking, right? Like, I have to really get down, scrape the bottom of the barrel before I find problems with Ohio State, where I say, like, yeah, that's going to, for me, my biggest question, I guess, is going to be, was last year just like, there was a moment where it snapped and Ryan Day just locked into like a trance state after, kind of losing to Michigan and saying, like, I have to find a way to save my job. Let's go win the Natty. Like, was that what happened? Or did they actually get over the psychological issue that seems like it was what was stopping Ohio State from getting over the top? They've been talented. They've had amazing quarterbacks. And it's always just been like one little thing that stopped them from winning the championship. They almost got there several times, and it's a kick that never had a chance as the clock strikes midnight at New Year's, right? And otherwise, that was a championship a couple years ago. It really is like just the little things with Ohio State. And this last season, they finally put it all together and figured it out. And it might have taken losing to Michigan after everything to kind of kick him in the pants a little bit and say, hey, let's get going. I think there's a really good chance they go 11-1 this year. I think they got a real good chance at possible undefeated. I think if they're going to lose one, honestly, if you made me pick between losing to Texas or in Ann Arbor, I'd tell them you're probably going to lose in Ann Arbor more, just because there's something about that game that has been a problem for Ohio State. I think they have a really good chance to beat Texas off the top of the season. I think they have a really good chance to beat Penn State at home to start November. This is a very good team. And the more time you give Sand to kind of settle in, find his feet, he's got the targets out there. He's got plenty of guys that can get it done for him out there. He's got a great run game that he can rely on. This is going to be a very good Ohio State team one more time. I think this team has what it takes to go back-to-back and win the whole thing again.